Hello, welcome to another NGWA Industry Connected video. My name is Marvin Glotfelty, and I'm a hydrogeologist in Arizona, also a licensed well driller here. And today I want to talk about communication challenges. In our industry, we have a lot of different stakeholders. We have regulators, we have our clients who some do and many do not understand the drilling practice. We have hydrogeologists and engineers who are know their technical stuff, but they may not and often don't know the drilling trade. And then the drillers themselves who understand that drilling trade, but just a tidbit with many exceptions, but just a tidbit of the hydrogeology. So how do all these people work together? Well, they have to communicate. And the problem is their communication is in different languages, different terms. A few years ago, myself and Cheryl Gordon and Ron Peterson from Baroid put together a glossary of drillers terms that NGWA offers on their bookstore, their online bookstore. That's because all these terms, when I first started putting that together, I thought, oh, there's got to be a dozen of them. There's got to be at least a dozen drillers terms. There's over 600 in that book, and it's not complete. There's a way more than that. So it's an actual dialogue, but it is detailed and precise, actually. And of course, it's a dialogue. It's not a language. So you go to Wisconsin, it's going to be different than in Arizona, and so on and so forth. People use different terms, and they vary between the oil and gas industry and water wells, but they're generally the same. So if somebody says trip the bit, they don't mean walk up to it and bump your toe and fall over it. They mean pull it out of the borehole. So there's terms and they mean things. And back before I was in water, I was a mud engineer for a while, so I learned these things, and that's where I've kind of always hung on to them. So if we consider these involved parties, we can then actually expand them a little bit, because you get other folks on site, geophysical loggers or the mud engineer or folks like that. You need to communicate with them, and they all have their own perspective. The geophysical loggers, everything is whether a borehole can be logged. The mud engineers thinking about the mud only. The drillers doing the drilling. The regulators looking for a violation. That's what they do. Everybody's got their different perspective. The client, they're going to come along and think like, oh, I'm spending all this money. Am I going to get bazillion gallons per minute that I unreasonably anticipated? Well, everybody's got their perspective, right? And the engineers and hydrogeologists are just tapping on their calculators and thinking strange thoughts. So that's what we do. So how do we then communicate? There's a lot of challenges to it. So first, as I've defined, we have our different perspectives, but we have different nomenclature too. Not only is it the driller's terms, but think about just a flow rate of water. You'd think there would be a unit for that. There is not a unit. We talk about gallons per minute or acre feet per year, million gallons per day. We use terms like cubic feet per second. There's so many, and I'm not even getting into metric. Don't get me started on metric. I gave a workshop in Australia once, and those guys, great people in Australia, and you can memorize liters per second on something, but then when they ask you a question, I have no idea what a liter per second looks like. I know very clearly what 1,000 gallons per minute looks like, but I don't know what a liter per second looks like. So these units can trip us up too. The other thing that can trip us up is our datums. So there's depth from land surface. There's depth to bedrock, or a thickness of a strata from the top of it to bedrock. There's feet above mean sea level. There's these different elevations and depths and things. There's been a number of times where people have messed up because they used the wrong datum. They were thinking about depth from land surface when it was supposed to be feet above mean sea level. So easy to trip up on those. It seems like it wouldn't happen, but it happens regularly. So we need to be mindful of that. And so layer on top of all this the fact that we're human beings. Now, I preach this to our junior staff around here a lot. Never be the last set of eyes, the only set of eyes that looks at your words before you send them to somebody, because you should at least have your set of eyes look at it twice. If I type a quick text or a quick email, I always read back through it and correct my flagrant errors. And then if it's going to be something important, like a technical specification or a report or a technical memorandum, I will have a new set of eyes look at it, different human being looking at it. And I'll tell you when I learned that lesson, when I was back in school. I got my master's degree up at Northern Arizona University and wrote my thesis. And I was so proud. I had reviewed it and reviewed it. I'd had my committee of professors review it and rip it up, and then I got it corrected. I had everything just right, and then it got sent to the printer and bound in a hard copy. I got it back and I opened the first page, and my eye went right to a misspelling. So I had to reread the whole thing again. So it turned out that that was the only misspelling in the whole thing. How come I didn't catch it before? I looked right at it, and that's human nature. You look right at something, it's going to be misspelled or misstated. But keep in mind that it can be technically accurate and just terribly worded. If you're talking to a non-technical person, you can't get into we can't say, oh well, the hydraulic conductivity approximates blah blah blah. We can't get into nomenclature. We need to make it clear to them. Otherwise, we fail to communicate. Two sides of communication: delivering a message and receiving the message. And sometimes the delivery and the reception don't connect. And so you have to say it like they can hear it. So how do you achieve that? Well, one thing to do is to keep in mind there's so many different kinds of people in the world, but we could generally divide them into four types. And we encounter all four of these types all the time. One of them would be the big dog, what we call the dominant personality. Okay, big dog comes in, usually shows up late to meetings and bosses people around. And the big dog, you know, is large and in charge, and you can't tell them anything they didn't already know, right? When you're going to communicate to the big dog, the worst thing you can do is start your sentence is, well, you have to understand that blah blah blah. No, they don't have to understand anything. They're the big dog. You know, they know it all. They will not like that. Whatever you tell them, they will not believe. So what you start with the big dog is you say, well, as you know, blah blah blah, and you tell them something they didn't know. But being the big dog, yeah, I knew that. I invented that. Yeah, and so that's the way things are with the dominant personality. And there's a lot of them out there that are in positions of power. So we start with that. Another one is expressive, and this is a little bit harder to follow, but it is a very common. And this is the people that want to have fun. They're always joking around and liking this, and they want to have fun with it, and they will physically, literally say, let's have fun with this. Let's have fun with this process. For some reason, and I'm one of those people, and they'll tend to rely heavily on references. So if you want to convince them of something, say, oh, well, I can tell you some other folks that you can check with them, and they'll check with them. They will check those references, so you can convince them of something. So, and you're not trying to manipulate. Well, you are trying to manipulate people, but in a positive way, in a professionally appropriate way. So that's what we're doing here. Another type of people, and we have a lot of them in the scientific world, is analytical. These are people that the biggest pile of data wins, you know, and they just want reports and information, and they'll look at it all and they get lost in it and swirl around. But when people want big piles of data, then you have to provide them support. You know, you're going to give them ASTM standards. You're going to give them technical reports and articles. Give them copies of the Water Well Journal, things like that, and then they'll have that data. The biggest pile will win. The last type is usually the less empowered people. They are more like a person that might be at the front desk, you know, that you're just trying to get in to meet somebody, but they are called amiable. And what they want is no change. They want things to just stay the way they always were. Can't we just stay the same? Let's don't change anything. It always was so nice before. So for those folks, it's baby steps. You don't have anything you can do because you're going to try to convince them to change something. How are you going to do that? To do that, you just have to go baby steps. Let's just do a little bit here. Okay, that was not so bad. Let's try a little bit more. Let's try that a little bit more. Let's change that viscosity just a little bit, just a little more gel in there. So things like that. So that's where you have those people. And once you identify these 4 categories, now, of course, there's a lot more than 4 types of people in the world, but that's good general mindset that we can all work with. So this is where the communication can happen. But regardless of whether it's written or verbal, however you're doing it, remember to think about the receiving end. We all think about the delivery end. And I was clear, I said that. Well, we heard it in our little minds, but what did the listener hear or the reader? That can be different. So we have to be, and get rid of our egos, because everybody messes up. Everybody's got things to learn. I had a recent example this week. No, it was last week. Still, recently. That I always thought that we will usually call out in technical specifications A53 steel, that's low carbon steel, for a surface casing. And that's fine. Turns out, though, the limit for A53 ASTM standard is 26 inches. Surface casings get a lot bigger than that in larger wells, 30 inch, maybe 40 inch. So I was calling for something that doesn't exist. Well, there's other standards that could be applied, but I had a driller, very, very good communication from that driller, pointed out very cordially to me. So he didn't say, "You idiot." He could have, but he didn't. So he was communicating well. I heard it. So now I need to let all our staff know, and other folks going forward, that happens to be one of 1,000 things that are out there that we might be tripping up on. So don't feel bad about it. Just communicate the best you can. So that's what we do, and that's how we can try to have the best projects possible in our industry.